What was your favorite pick? What was your least favorite pick? We're going to take calls throughout the show. It's going to be a much looser format today than it usually is because we just got a lot to get to here as we wrap it up. But on the Patriots draft class itself, Cerrone, and I can read the class off if you want to check it out. Matt Dolph on 98.5thesportshub.com did his annual Meet the Patriots draft class. So they start off Drake May with the 3rd overall pick. Second round, trade down a little bit, take wide receiver Jalen Polk out of Washington, stay at 68. Caden Wallace, the tackle from Penn State, wraps up day 2. They start off day 3 with a guard. First, Felger Maz big board hit, Lane Robinson from Texas A&M. Javon Baker, 7 picks later, wide receiver out of UCF. Then they had like a 50-pick gap. Actually, no, sorry, it was a 70-pick gap. Exactly 70 picks. They come back on the board. They take Marcellus Dial, a corner out of South Carolina, their lone defensive pick. 13 picks later, the double up at quarterback. It's Joe Milton from Tennessee. And then Jaheim Bell, I put tight end in air quotes. We'll talk about that. The tight end from Florida State wraps up this 8-man class, to which I say, I think they did a pretty good job. I think it's a relatively chalky draft, which is kind of what they needed, and I think what people around here wanted after the last few years. Obviously love the Drake May pick at the top. I really like what they did at wide receiver. Not only do I think they got 2 players and played the board well at the position, they got 2 guys that specifically their skill sets line up really well with Drake May's skill sets, and I think that's important. Right? The old Belichickism. It's not about collecting talent. It's about building a team. And they didn't just go out and get the flashiest wide receivers. They got guys that are going to maximize their quarterback and vice versa. I thought Jaheim Bell late was a great pick. There's going to be... I'm interested to see how they're going to use him. He doesn't really have a position. He's listed as a tight end, but he can play big slot. He can play running back. He can play fullback. For a team that's rebuilding its offense and can build a role in for him, some people thought he'd be a fringe top 100 pick. So to get him at 231 is great. They get the double up at quarterback at Joe Milton, which will be at the very least a ton of fun in the preseason. The one kind of question I have is I wish they'd done more to address left tackle. We'll see what happens with Caden Wallace. They're going to play him at left, but he's a career right tackle in college. It's just this thing again where they seem convicted that they're going to have a right tackle move to left, whether it's Chuks Okorafor, whether it's Caden Wallace. That seems to be the plan. That's kind of the one question I have coming away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the draft. It was one of the more enjoyable draft experiences as a Patriots fan. It was pretty entertaining, especially when you got to Joe Milton. The first thing I thought about was, man, I got to hit up Alex.
I heard you guys. I was in the other room working. I heard you guys talking about it yesterday.
Oh man. But I really.
I'll tell you this: you weren't the only one that thought hitting me up. You would have thought I got drafted. The way my phone blew up. I'm not even kidding. I had like 100 text messages when I finished writing the thing and looked at my phone.
I was pretty pleased with it. Even all the way up to Jaheim Bell. The only time I really got to watch him play that I remember watching him play actually was when they were playing against BC. And BC had a chance of winning that game. That's why I was locked into BC Florida State early on, and he had himself a day. But I was pleasantly surprised with the draft. I mean, of course, you go up and down timelines, don't care if it's Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is. Some people will on this receiver, that receiver, or because they didn't have big speed in the 40, people comparing them to N'Keal Harry or some of these other, guys that didn't work out well for the Patriots. And, but I'm pleased with them. I love the way they went through their draft. I love the way they kind of, for the most part, stayed where they were. It wasn't, it was trades, but it wasn't what we're used to around here. Oh, no, trade back 2 more rounds. Trade back. I'll come back tomorrow. And I kind of like the way they just stayed, for the most part, stayed in their range and got the guys they wanted, not the guys that everybody else wanted. They had their plan and they stuck to it.
And especially you talk about the top of the draft. And I know some people thought Polk was a reach based on the projections. My thing about using draft projections once the picks are in, I compare it to, you have a convertible. You're going for a drive the next day. You look at the forecast. It says it's sunny. Great. I'm going to drive with the top down. You walk outside. It's raining. Are you still going to drive with the top down? Because the forecast last night said it was sunny. Like, that's how I look at it. And we talked a lot leading up to the draft about that 34th pick, and is there going to be a run on tackle, pushing a receiver to them? Is there going to be a run on receiver, pushing a tackle to them? In the end, there was a run on both because nobody took defense. Nobody. Yep. We set records at tackle and receiver in the first round. You could argue at that point, Jalen Polk was the best receiver on the board. The only other guy there was A.D. Mitchell, who I think a lot of teams passed on because of medical red flags, which we didn't know leading up. Like, I would have changed my projection had I known about that. That came out super late. Could they have moved up in the first? Mike Reese had a piece this morning that they were trying to move up to the 32nd pick, maybe get Xavier Legette or Ricky Pearsall, which would have been nice, but also then you don't make that trade with the Chargers. You don't get 110. You probably don't have Javon Baker. And would I have liked Ricky Pearsall over Jalen Polk? Yes. Would I have liked Xavier Legette over Jalen Polk? Yes. I don't think the gap is that big, especially with Legette, where having Polk and Baker, to me, is a better option.
Yeah.
So I thought they played the board really well in that spot. And like you mentioned, they did. I was sure they were going to close that gap. After that trade, they had that 70-pick gap. But you kept hearing it yesterday from the insiders that the league felt after the fourth round, this draft dropped off. There weren't a lot of guys with 5th, 6th, 7th round grades. It was kind of just UDFAs. So they probably sat there and said, why do we need another pick here? Why do we need another pick in this round? And then the guys they got, I mean, Marcel Dial was a fringe draftable player. He's going to play special teams, but Joe Milton's a guy some people thought would go in the top 150. Jaheim Bell's a guy some people, before he had kind of a rough combine, people thought might be a top 100 pick. Yeah, so they got tremendous value down there.
Last night I was driving around, had the satellite radio on. I was listening to the Bruins game and into the Celtics game. Celtics were just going off, but they were replaying some stuff from NBC Sports after the first 2 rounds. Who should go here? Who should go where? And they had a whole segment on Jaheim Bell and how they thought he was going early. And then I'm like, that's interesting. It's interesting to listen to the old radio broadcast before the picks are made and what people were saying about players. And Jaheim Bell was one of the names that came up. And they had him going like 4th round or something like that. And for him to fall to them that late, I think that was their steal of the draft, in my opinion.
That if we're gonna go like pound for pound, like their best picks relative to where they were taken, I'm sorry. I mean, Drake May getting him 3rd still great. Jaheim Bell might be 2nd. Jaheim Bell really might be 2nd if we're gonna do the value thing.
Yeah. He's a go ahead, man.
We'll see. I mean, we're opening the show talking about the 7th round pick, but he's a really interesting pick because, again, I think part of the reason he fell was nobody knows what position he plays. Like he's kind of a tight end, he's kind of a big slot receiver. He can play some running back, some fullback. In a team that's totally remaking its offense, you can carve out a role for him, which is great. And ultimately, that gets back to the big point. We can jump back to the top of the draft here, and this kind of cues us up for where we're going next. They said weaponize the offense, and we all kind of rolled our eyes at that, and they didn't sign anybody in free agency. They went out, they got Drake May options. They got him options. Again, I would have liked to see them get him more protection, but they got him options. You can't say they didn't do that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for Drake May now moving forward? He's a Patriot. No more Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, whatever. It's Drake May. New England, Drake May is your quarterback. What does that look like now moving forward in the coming weeks, months, and years?